Hopefully this is working. I don't know, that took kind of a long time to be able to do something. Hello. Um, Good to see you, party people in my house, apparently. Um, no, I'm just going to put this on. I was trying to not have to put that on, but forget it. I'm just going to put it on. So, hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for watching, and I'm just going to talk. I will say briefly, or I would say briefly, but I've met me and I've seen how long some of my videos take at things. But I was going to talk about just having seen Godzilla versus Kong. Now, I will preface this. I will try to not make a whole lot of references of the sort of original King Kong versus Godzilla from back in the day. The sort of dubbed version, at least. I think I've seen the Japanese version maybe once or twice, but I've seen the English language sort of dub version. I don't know. I can't count that many times. A lot. A lot. I will say this, though, for fans of both. There is, I could probably say, maybe mercifully, a lack of people complaining about their corns. And fortunately, no one was passing out cigarettes to children. So, on certain grounds, progress has been made. That being said, in general, not bad. I probably liked out of the three sort of Godzilla movies of the last 10 years, this is probably my second of the three favorite. The first Godzilla movie being kind of low on the list of the three. I mean, if I could make, out of three movies, if I could make that first Godzilla number four, it would be. Because Godzilla was barely in the damn movie. It was more about Potato Head McArmy Boy having daddy issues and trying to see his family stuff or something like that than anything else. The good thing about I was called a remake of Godzilla King of the Monsters because it kind of is. I mean, again, a lot of these things they're kind of updated remakes. And I've seen the originals for most of them. But King of the Monsters was, all the human stuff, which was kind of like, it's always the least interesting part of any sort of kaiju movie is was front and center. It was about the monsters, and all the human stuff had to do with working around the monsters or giving the monsters a chance. The humans were support to the monster stuff as opposed to you know, being their own stories and the monster stuff just sort of happening around it in order to have some sort of change. It's almost like some of these movies turn into, like some sort of natural disaster movie, but instead of a big tsunami or an earthquake, it's kaiju. Well, I'm sorry. If there's a big monster movie, I don't give a crap about the people. I want to see the big monsters, and I want to see the big monsters fight and do cool big monster stuff. It's one of the reasons why, I'm sorry, I know some people might disagree with me on this, but it's one of the reasons why I hate that Pacific Rim movie. Because you're supposed to have big freaking robots fighting big freaking monsters. And what do you have for 75% of the movie or more? A bunch of people, a bunch of, again, army based sort of potato heads, um, and a mass amount, and just basically just raining daddy issues on you all over the. I mean, the whole Pacific Rim is basically daddy issues being worked out in the natural disaster context of maybe there's some cool things happening that we might want to see more. When they actually fought, that was cool. Most of the movie had nothing to do with the reason why I wanted to watch the movie, so I can't stand Pacific Rim. Okay, that's out of the way. For Godzilla versus Kong, it's kind of like a medium between how much monster and good idea we did keeping the people just being ancillary to the monsters of Godzilla King of the Monsters, and why don't we have it all be about people doing stuff, and then, okay, I guess there will be sort of monsters later. Godzilla vs. Kong is kind of in between that, in the way that there was too much people but there was still a certain amount of purpose with them with the monster. I had a friend of mine who actually said this is pretty much Kong's movie, and I agree with that. The bulk of the sort of narrative arc really rests with Kong. Not necessarily complaining about that, but it played weird. All I could think of when watching this is like it's like they try to make an Avengers movie, or they try to make some sort of Marvel movie, but they're using Godzilla and Kong for it. It's like they watched Thor a bunch of times before making this, and decide, well, if we take out the whole thing about being worthy, and everything, then that's. But it was still like Kong trying to go home, and then they're still trying to force in Hollow Earth stuff, and then you've got to have, and then so like there's this whole other journey with Kong. It's like the whole thing with Kong initially, and trying to get that. There will be spoilers, just so you know. I know I'm 6 minutes into this. I'll try and put it in the thing too. There will be spoilers, so you've been warned. Um, was I don't know, it was almost like that was sort of one thing, and then they made another Godzilla movie, and then they tried to, like, okay, shit, we don't have a full Godzilla movie, and we don't have a full Kong movie. We'll just sort of smish them together a little bit, and then we'll just put, I don't know how we make this together, Evil Corporation. So there's, besides Monarch, apparently there's now an Apex. And, well, in the very beginning of the movie, you see Kong kind of doing like a normal people wake up thing. He kind of gets up, the light's bright, he scratches his butt, he sits under a waterfall like it's a shower. Okay. I was kind of like, oh, okay, why are we trying to basically make him human? Like he's some normal dude about to go to his job. Like, hell. Um, and there's a little girl of an indigenous girl. You find out later she's deaf, and there's a lot of sign language stuff. And she's like kind of face to face with Kong, and they seem to like each other. And she offers him. She's apparently like this homemade sort of Kong toy that she actually kind of offers. She keeps it throughout, but she kind of offers it to him too. And all I could think of is that moment in Brooklyn Nine-Nine where Diaz was like, this is now my dog. I didn't get it before. I do now. If anything happens to him, I'll kill all of you and then myself. I'm like, I kind of felt that about the girl. Like, if anything, it's not going to clearly, but if anything did happen to this girl, like, I think we'd be justified in rioting or something like that. Maybe that's a poor choice of words for 2021. A strongly worded email to the thing. I don't know. I can't, scratch rioting. Forget I said that. Um, but yeah, but spoiler again for that. The deafness was almost sort of a way to sneak in making Kong Coco the gorilla, because they had tried to communicate with Kong on this whole thing, and he's pissed. He's kind of stuck on this island, the Skull Island. There's this big thing built up around him. He's kind of pissed that he's trapped there ostensibly, and they've basically trapped him there because they're worried that if Godzilla knows he's there or around, then both of them have that sort of alpha instinct, which actually almost feels like a fighting game from the 90s. Uh, but since both of them have that instinct, then they would both have to fight it out. So this was their attempt to try and keep another major sort of kaiju battle from happening and keep Kong safe. But the having a deaf girl there was sort of a way to now have Kong learn sign language and be able to communicate with us, or at least with the girl. Is the only person he kind of liked. He tolerated the one sort of scientist, but he liked the girl, and that was a way to kind of get them to actually be able to communicate, sort of thing. But after some of that gets established, not the communication, not as much, but the some of it gets established, you find that there's a African American dude who has a sort of conspiracy podcast and is trying to kind of take down this huge corporation called Apex. Apex seems like it's sort of like Monarch in terms of dealing with all the kaiju stuff and everything, but or titans as they call them kaiju. Been calling them kaiju for longer than anyone's been calling them titans. So, um, but they, some other nefarious plot. There's a huge cybernetics thing that Godzilla attacks, and everyone's flipping out because we thought Godzilla was our savior, and now he's coming in and attacking random shit. And oh no, people died, and all this other stuff happened. But this guy is trying to get out. This company is screwing around with stuff and is really dangerous, and this stuff happens. And he saw what looked like, a big round thing, possibly a big cybernetic eye. I'm just going to put this out there, here, there too. I called this. There's stuff that I called um, during or when the initial sort of trailer came out. I called something. It ended up happening. There was a little twist to it, which I thought was actually pretty damn cool. But the sort of setup for this was sort of lost on me because I'm like, oh shit, I was right. Okay, good. Usually I kind of ruin movies or TV shows for myself and sometimes other people fairly early on, and I already kind of ruined some of it for me, for myself, and just the trailer. And so, Um, but that podcast and that kind of conspiracy thing is what gets Madison or Millie Bobby Brown's character involved because she's listening to this and thinks all this other stuff is happening. Her dad's running all this, stuff with Monarch, and dealing with what happened, and it was in Florida where the thing was attacked, and they're dealing with that. And then she, again, this is where some of the superfluousness comes in, because we really didn't need a whole other big crazy corporation to handle this part of the story. This could have been a part of Monarch. You could have had the eccentric billionaire, sort of people villain, as part of Monarch. You didn't need to make this whole other thing happen in there. And then to get her again, and then was it Madison, Millie Bobby Brown's character, who, by the way, as a side note, Millie Bobby Brown, I think Maya was the little indigenous girl, young indigenous girl. Little is maybe not the right word. She's very young, little kid. They did very well in this. So they did very well for kind of what they had and everything. So, kudos to them. Very good actresses, even with their, ages and things like that. And I don't even really mean to make that as a detriment. Their talent and whatever, and the skills that they've learned in whatever time, done pretty well. Both of them did really well. Um, but for some reason, Madison gets like a friend of hers who she's obviously in high school now. Age is sort of amorphous. They have her driving, so maybe we're supposed to believe she's 16 now. I don't know, or maybe it's just screw it. I'm doing this anyway. But he's sort of hyper and anxietal New Zealand kid, apparently roughly her age, who apparently has a brother that has this beat up van and they do weather tracking, maybe? At least that's what the van said. It's sort of like, oh, we're going to have this friend in here and he's going to be a sort of anxietal, nerdy, techie kind of person. And I guess it's kind of good that they didn't really have to go into a full backstory of how we met in school and this whole thing. Is just sort of, okay, you're my friend, you have this stuff, let's go. That I appreciate. And it's cool that, again, we have, you know, uh, um, a New Zealander, and not like a New Zealander like it would look like me, and saying that, like, clearly someone with um, a great deal of would be Maori background. So awesome. Some more representation. Cool. I'm good with that. I just don't really understand what was really necessary about his character. To me, this kid could have not been in the movie at all, or at least his character could have not been in the movie at all, and it actually probably would have helped. It would have trimmed some of the stuff that didn't need to be in there. So they eventually track down, and again, them tracking down the dude who was the engineer at Apex, who was running the podcast was really superfluous. It was just kind of like, okay, like, do we need this? It really seemed like a lot of it wasn't really necessary. That like they could have trimmed this and added more monsters in it, and to with the runtime, or had maybe a smaller runtime, but so then the percentage of monsters they had went up. It would have been better. So they tracked him down. Eventually, they find him. Everyone really easily convinces that this is a good thing to do. He's kind of conspiracy oriented. Apparently, he lost his wife a while ago, so he's maybe a little. But again, that was sort of like, do we need to have this much characterization for something that apparently has no influence on him being sort of conspiracy guy trying to take down Apex, and never really comes up again? The only reason it really comes up is that he keeps this flask in a gun holster, which has like really high priced scotch in it, that was a gift his wife gave him, and then that'll be like, he knows he hits bottom when that's empty or something like that. So it's basically Desmond from Lost with the last book of Dickens he hadn't read. Oh boy, I am very sorry about that. So it's like Desmond from Lost with the last book of Dickens that he hadn't read yet. So when it's like before he dies, this will be the last thing. So it's sort of like that. It kind of comes up as a thing, but again, the way it comes up, some of it was really unnecessary. So they, event there. I'm going to kind of double track this. So it's just easier because they kept going back and forth, back and forth. So they go, they find one thing. Um, they get apparently this Apex has all this like hyper cooled technology and super fast like railgun sort of delivery things to go, from uh, like Florida, Hong Kong in like an hour. All this other stuff. And again, a lot of that Hollow Earth stuff that they talked about in King of the Monsters, that you saw Atlantis that got nuked, and that one guy who was kind of on the team was talking about it. That comes up a lot. Maybe they're utilizing that, but there's some sort of like high speed mag technology stuff that they use, and they're like, oh, well, they find like these monster eggs in them. Why do they find these monster eggs in them? They make it to Hong Kong and they break into a sort of really big facility sort of thing, huge sort of thing. Guys like, well, if there's a sacrificial sort of thing, we're in it, but they keep going in it. And you'll see why here in a second. So I'm going to cut actually. I'm going to cut now and go over the people who run Apex tap Eric from True Blood. Alexander Skarsgård is in it, and that's good. Oddly utilized. Oddly utilized. Like, he's a good actor. He did a really good job too, because he's a good actor. And so they try to make him, I get he wrote some Hollow Earth book, borderline discredited, sort of given like a Mulder treatment, a crappy office in the basement sort of thing. And I guess so they had to make it where, he tried to find some Hollow Earth thing in these holes, one of them in Antarctica, but there was a gravity inversion, and his brother was in there, and it like crushed him. He died instantly in this horrible gravity inversion sort of thing. Just so happens Apex has made these vehicles that can be able to survive that, so they want to get him. I can't remember his name. I just know he's Irk. Alexander Skarsgård, Eric from True Blood. They want to get him to go find this source of energy that they tracked in the Hollow Earth. Apparently, they were able to track these Hollow Earth tubes. They found this huge energy source, and if they can get that huge energy source, it can help them be able to fend off Godzilla. Because now apparently everyone's freaked out that Godzilla's gone rogue. Then there's, of course, evil, nefarious plot with that. So in order to do that, he has an idea to go hook up with the woman who's running the Kong research to try and get Kong to lead them down. He eventually, obviously he convinces her there wouldn't be a movie. So they go, they're on these ships. They find out the little girl can really communicate with Kong more than they realize, and he's sort of chained up on there and kind of pissed off. All of a sudden, Godzilla finds him, and Godzilla attacks. And it looks like, they're going to get all drowned. Eric is able to. I'm just going to call him Eric. Alexander Skarsgård. I can't remember his character's name. I think it's Nate. You know, it might be Nathan. I'm just going to call him Eric anyway, because he was one of my favorite characters in True Blood. Even though I couldn't finish watching, because halfway through the seventh season, I was just like, I'm fucking done. But him, Lafayette, and Pam are probably my three favorite characters. Not necessarily in that order. But so yeah, he releases them and they kind of fight. There is a blatant Neon Genesis Evangelion moment of Kong jumping from ship to ship in order to kind of fight, just the way Asuka does in Unit 2. But he kind of gets beat and they kind of play possum and Godzilla leaves him alone. Again, the idea that Godzilla has to be the alpha, the apex, and every other Titan or kaiju has to sort of bow in submission. And if they don't, he kills them. And the one doctor's point, her point was, well, Kong's not going to bow, but he kind of got beat up a little bit. He wasn't used to fighting in water. Godzilla had the upper hand. Okay, fine. So some of this actually reminds me of Last Jedi. That whole part on the sort of casino um, Monte Carlo planet was really sort of useless, superfluous, seemed to take out from the flow of everything else, and seemed really disjointed. So some of this seemed kind of disjointed. So, long story short, they find, uh, they find the Hollow Earth thing. They convince Kong to go in. They get in there. They survive. There's like I think three ships with him. One of them gets destroyed by the other monsters that are there. Kong fights some other monsters, which was good. That was cool. They help him a little bit, and then he defeats them and eats one of their brains, kind of thing. But okay, more monster fights. That's good. But there was like one. Then they follow him and there's some weird gravity stuff. Okay, great. And they find, another big door chamber sort of thing. So if you remember from King of the Monsters, there was that big chamber, that whole big Atlantis, Civilization Zero sort of hall of the Godzilla god. Something like that for Kong. You know, giant gorilla statue, kind of a throne, clear, huge, massive arches and all this other stuff. And then you find this, there's other sort of monster skeletons there, and this sort of axe is embedded, and the axe is a big bone, and in the bone and wrapped up is what looks like one of Godzilla's sort of plates, like his Stegosaurus kind of plates, and that's used as the axe. And then he puts it in this one part of the floor that's glowing with the blue Godzilla glow, and there's stuff on the floor glowing, and he puts that in there, and it completes this circuit. And in the circuit is this sort of almost Ouroboros, or Ouroboros, however you want to pronounce it. I've heard like all of those, and it's clearly like snake Godzilla. So kind of Godzilla head, snake body, and then this sort of Godzilla Stegosaurus kind of plate sort of thing. So you have a Ouroboros, whatever, Jormungandr sort of circle around this throne, and that throws up the sort of beacon to Apex that, hey, we found the energy source. Now, while that's going on, Millie Bobby Brown and the nerds are in this big thing, and it comes out that the sort of scientist with the guy who's running Apex goes into this whole chamber, puts this helmet on thing, and lo and behold, they have a Mecha Godzilla. He's not in it like a Gundam sort of thing. It's like a psychic, neural psycho connection sort of thing. And, Mecha Godzilla, there is a test, there's a monster gets in there. This thing, rips it up, used breath thing, but it kind of runs out of energy. And then you realize and find out that was the whole reason why they wanted the energy source from the center Earth was to power this thing. Now, they're not really tapping the power. Apparently, once they can read the energy signature and the wavelength of it, apparently that's enough to now manufacture the power source for this thing. I don't understand that. Like, if, okay, you need a power source, this is a power source, and they're not even doing like some sort of like Nikola Tesla, wireless transmission of energy. It's just once they read the power source, which if you identify this power source, don't you already have its signature? I would think. But no, apparently they need to activate this whole Kong chamber, and that gave them the ability to read the power signature and stuff. And then when that got transmitted up, then they could read it and then pump it into Mechagodzilla. But there's a cool thing with that. And then, the guy's daughter, it was apparently, I don't know the daughter's name, but the actress is Isa Gonzalez. I don't know who that is, but I'm kind of glad that she was in there because it's like, well, okay. Um, but again, she was sort of like a nondescript, sort of like whatever villainy henchman kind of person. I mean, there's again another thing that you could have taken out, and it really wouldn't have affected anything that much. So Godzilla's going through into Hong Kong because the test that the nerds sort of witnessed clued him in that, oh, that's what it is that I was looking for over here in Florida. So he goes zoop over in Hong Kong, um, to fight that. Kong activates the energy. Apparently, apparently Hong Kong is close enough to the way the inner earth is, because Kong went from the bottom. There's like two levels of the inner earth, and there's like a gravity inversion, so you can kind of walk on the ceiling, what it looks like. Apparently that was close. That Kong throne room, luckily enough, was directly under Hong Kong, and not deep enough where Godzilla's breath would run out before it drilled all the way down into it. That's right, Godzilla at any point in time apparently could have used his nuclear breath to drill down into major parts of the inner earth, including to Kong's chamber, which is right under downtown Hong Kong. Good. Um, so that starts bringing everybody together. Now, the cool thing, so King Kong comes up and sees Godzilla, and they have a big fight, and that big fight was pretty cool. King Kong brings the axe, which was kind of helpful apparently to help him kind of, you know, it was almost like an old school wrestling match or something like that. There was kind of, you know, kind of Kong won this round. And Godzilla won the round in the water. The first round in Hong Kong, it seems like Kong. It's really getting difficult to say. King Kong sort of won, and he had the axe. And that again, this is where it sort of like starts getting a little bit like a Thor movie, especially since they find out that Godzilla's nuclear breath can, gets absorbed because it's whatever, assuming that this is a sort of race of beings and not just the same two over and over and over and over and over again throughout, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Assuming that they're different ones, it's the same species or whatever. So it charges it and then makes big boom. So King Kong kind of won that sort of round, and then Godzilla so Godzilla's kind of out, gets back up. King Kong does seem to kind of have an upper hand a little bit and is using the buildings to jump around in a really way and in cool ways. But then Godzilla pretty much stomps the crap out of King Kong, including literally stomps the crap out of King Kong. Actually, foot on his chest, grinding it down, roaring in his face. King Kong kind of roars back, but Godzilla knows like he's done. At one point, King Kong tries to get back up, and no, he's done too. So Godzilla's like, all right, where's that other thing that I was looking for? My keys? Was it my keys? No, it was this other robot thing. Come to find out, the robot thing, the chamber or the room that the dude who was piloting Mecha Godzilla, was what happened to the Ghidorah skull that was um, uh, found in like the was it the after credit scene or whatever in King of the Monsters. So Charles Dance's character, gets shown one of the Ghidorah skulls that these fishermen pulled up. So Apex apparently used that and the telepathic abilities of Ghidorah and the other titans and kaiju in order to have a neural link with the Mecha Godzilla. But when they pumped it full of the energy signature, again, not the actual energy they tapped from the inner earth, but the energy signature that they read, they couldn't apparently read when they picked it up to begin with, then they turned on what seemed to be, now it seemed to me this way, it seemed to me that it turned on enough of Ghidorah that the guy piloting it kind of went freaked out, and he got fried basically, and the thing sort of took on you saw Mechagodzilla kind of die and then come back. So it really seemed to me that Mechagodzilla was basically possessed by the consciousness of Ghidorah or Ghidorah. I thought that was fucking cool. Like, that's cool. Like, okay, that's a nice little twist on Mechagodzilla, because we had, in the old days, it was the Earth one, and then the sort of space people one that seemed to show up once in a while in some of these Godzilla movies. With like the really tight things and the sunglasses and the sort of egg stuff going on. But this it was people made, but then Ghidorah, however you want to pronounce it, I forget which one is supposed to be more correct right now. Um, Sort of possesses it in terms of the consciousness sort of thing. That was cool. I like that part a lot. I'm again, I like credit where due. That was freaking cool. So King Kong's getting messed up. The Eric from True Blood and the other woman who was the woman from Iron Man 3 who helped AIM, and then the little girl who could sign to him, who's adorable. She was like she could like kind of read his heartbeat and knew it was slowing down. So Eric from True Blood used the last of the ship things because the dude's daughter got killed in a really Kong was flying away. They were flying away, and Kong looks in the thing, sees that the little girl's in, and just goes. I was like, good for you. But he is able to kind of somehow. Okay, I'm guessing that because he knew about these inner earth things, and there seemed to be, uh, bases set up and all this other stuff, that he had some previous technical knowledge. And that's, he had made a comment. It was like, you see this inversion thing, it's this beautiful thing. He knew about it. I'm guessing he had some technical knowledge. Because apparently these super new heave vehicles, which allowed them to go through the um, gravity inversion. Apparently, he was able to pilot the damn thing after having only been in it once. He could pilot this thing like he was born to it. And because there's a lot of maneuvering and stuff they had to do after they shot back up and not get hit by Kong or Godzilla or the breath. And he was flying that thing, like Starbuck from Battlestar, baby. I mean, he was really good. And apparently, he also knows how to. This is, my, you know, Doctor Who training coming in, but apparently he could reverse the polarity of the neutron flow enough to basically use this new ship that no one's ever seen before, and he's been in once or twice now technically. But after one time he could fly, and he knows how to rewire this thing to turn it into a big AED machine for King Kong. Nice. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay, that's believable for a dude who wrote a Hollow Earth book that failed and seemed to have his biggest drive be, I don't know, there is an inner Earth or Hollow Earth. So it seems like a lot of people got like these sort of tragic backstories for a piece of dialogue. and then that's it. Now, part of me likes the fact that those tragic backstories weren't harped on all the damn time. So where now it's like, all right, I get it. Your brother died, you feel bad. All right, I get it. Your wife died. This is your last sort of thing to remember her. Okay, but it wasn't. But it just seemed, it seemed like some of these backstories were just there to have a tragic backstory and then just to have it. Like, this is what a character needs, some sort of tragic backstory. Okay. In King Kong, or in King of the Monsters, the family's sort of tragic backstory really influenced kind of what led to a lot of the action of the movie. With, the wife having was it the orca thing to give the signals and stuff. This was just like, we got a couple guys, these two men, we're going to give these tragic backstories to, and I guess it'll fuel kind of what they do, but kind of not. Whatever, we won't really talk about it ever again. So again, there's a mixed blessing with that. But at the same point in time, if it's not really going to be much of an inspiration, don't bring it up. Don't make it. It's this sort of like, you're making a D&D character with a tragic backstory just to make a D&D character with a tragic backstory because you want to play someone with a tragic backstory, but it never really comes up during your campaign. And what was kind of the point of that? So, yeah, Mecha Godzilla comes in and it's kicking the crap out of regular Godzilla. Regular Godzilla does get some good hits in, but Mecha Godzilla is beating the snot out of him. To be fair, Mechagodzilla apparently has, can shoot missiles and did cool. See, this is what was cool. Some of that fight was the reason why I went to see the damn thing in the theater, because you have a giant Mechagodzilla that's got jets on its back and it's flying into regular Godzilla and like jumping off, shooting a jets, and then like power Superman punching him with jets, and whatever other energy stuff he has in his hands is like, okay, jet arm, help you punch. Like Iron Man did stuff with that. That was one of the cool things of from like Pacific Rim. We have this big fist and this big robot. We've got a jet engine in the elbow, and we're going to use that to go punch a monster really, really hard, more hard than he would have been able to do it just punching it. Yes, giant robots with cool thrusters and cool energy weapons fighting giant monsters. Thank you. That's why I'm here. I don't care about this other stuff. That's why I'm here. Otherwise, I'll just wait for it to be on Amazon Prime or Netflix. And even then, whatever, if there isn't big freaking monsters fighting. Thank you for the big monsters fighting. That's what I want to see. So eventually King Kong comes and they try and tell like the little girl gets convinced by the adults that to tell King Kong that Godzilla isn't the enemy, that they can kind of coexist kind of thing. He's not the enemy, this other thing is. And Kong's sort of like, I'm done, man. Y'all woke me up. I don't want to deal with that. Come on. And so he's like, fine, screw it, whatever. Gets the axe, and so he kind of comes in, saves Godzilla from getting what Godzilla did to the Mutos in the beginning, opening mouth and blasting the energy in. Saves him from that. Godzilla kind of, they both kind of save each other and are doing okay against Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla still getting the upper hand. Mechagodzilla about to kill Kong. Godzilla shoots the axe with his breath. The axe gets powered up, and Kong is able to start chopping limbs off of Mechagodzilla and then cuts his head off, pulls the spine out, and roars and all that other thing. And that was after. Yeah, see, there's like just too much. They were trying to do all this other stuff to find these passwords to try and shut down Mechagodzilla. Madison and the two other nerds were trying to do that, and then the Maori kid was trying to do this password thing, and of course there's clever yelling banter between the tech nerds about blah blah HTML blah blah 90s computer blah blah password blah blah. No one cares. It was just more like Come on, like, what's the point of this? So what happened is that the kid, the older dude was about to drink the whiskey from his wife, and then the kid was like, "Oh, apparently, even though half of the tech center got ripped apart by Mechagodzilla, this one computer's still working." Um, and then pouring whiskey in apparently some random vent above the keyboard. I mean, it sort of looked almost like, if any of you have ever worked in like a cafe or as a barista, the sort of grill, sort of filter drain. I mean, that's kind of what it looked like. It looked like some sort of like the grill for like a drain. Like that's it should you should be pouring liquid down there is what it looked like. But somehow that was enough to pour a little flask of whiskey in this drain looking vent thing after. So if you know the whole tech center that the this one computer is at was several times the size of this room. So if we scale it back, it's like my cabinets and windows and probably my bookshelf and then my, heater, all this kind of area getting ripped out. But there's my computer here apparently is not going to be affected by that at all, even though everything's networked. And if it were networked in and plugged in and all this other stuff, apparently that doesn't affect it at all. So apparently all that was just window. There was no wires. There was nothing running through that at all anyway. And even though the Ghidorah head was in a whole different room with whole different hookups and whole different everything else like that, apparently pouring a small flask of whiskey in this thing was enough to short out the entire computer, enough to cause a glitch in Mechagodzilla to give Godzilla and Kong again back the upper hand. You see what I mean? You see what I mean by that there's so much stuff with this that was just superfluous? A lot of this could have been trimmed, condensed. You didn't need a couple of these other people here. You didn't need a couple of these other people there. It all could have been monarchs. You didn't need this whole other, corporation, giant entity of a thing in order to do this. It could have been much tighter to do this. So, Godzilla gets up, they roar, Godzilla and Kong roar at each other a little bit. Godzilla swims away. Kong goes apparently into the inner earth, calls that home. Eric from True Blood goes with the other woman and the little girl there, and that's where they're, watching and dealing with Kong and the other thing. And yeah, and then it's sort of okay, we're kind of done. Great. Millie Bobby Brown and her dad, and then the other guys apparently are fine and no anything happens to them at all. There's no little like Jurassic World thing where there's some sort of congressional conference where someone's speaking at that. Even again, the Avengers even had that. There was more of a resolution. And with that, this was sort of like, all right, Godzilla fucks off the way Godzilla does. Okay. There's a certain amount of mutual respect between him and Kong. Okay. Pretty much what I figured. And that was the thing. There was something in the trailer that made it look like there was a robot monster. So I called it that there was going to be Mechagodzilla, and then Godzilla and King Kong were going to have to team up and fight Mechagodzilla. So this way they get around the people who are sort of like King Kong's better. No, Godzilla's better. No, King Kong's better. No, I like Godzilla better. No, it's King Kong. You get around that. You have both of them sort of knock each other around and get some good licks in and knock each other out and around a little bit. Godzilla kind of wins the fight between them, but it's really Kong that does the sort of final damage to Mechagodzilla with an assist from Godzilla. So the scales kind of even out a little bit, and then they roar at each other, and then they're sort of like, all right, what's up? Peace out. Be good. Sort of thing. And, Kong goes into the inner earth, and then he's going to be King Kong down there, and Godzilla can still be the sort of sword of Mother Earth up here in the regular part of the planet. Great. pretty much how I saw that end. But if you're going to build up all this stuff with the people, they really don't resolve much of it either, except that half of the humans involved are now kind of apparently in the inner Earth, hanging out with Kong, and then the rest of them are kind of fine. The rest of them kind of have no consequences or all the consequences, and they kind of get involved with, because Eric with True Bloods apparently now with either Apex or Monarch. I lost count who. I think Monarch monitoring Kong. Yeah, I think Monarch, because I think the stuff on there had Monarch on there. So Eric's apparently now with Monarch after being Mulder in some college somewhere. I don't know why he kind of had, when he first saw him, he kind of had not long hair but a little bit longer, kind of down to his eyes, and this nice beard. And then when you see him later, he's really short hair and no beard. I'm like, should have kept him with the long hair and the beard. That was a good look for him. And it kind of separates him out from other stuff, like what was he, Tarzan or something for half a second, and Flag in The Stand, and then Eric from True Blood. It kind of separates that character out from that, especially since this character's kind of a little bit more of like, again, apparently anyone with any intelligence has to be really anxietal and twitchy. He's kind of anxietal and twitchy a little bit. I don't. It was like they did all this stuff. They had these two sets of human stuff going on, three sets of human stuff going on, and a lot of people who were superfluous and unnecessary. Sort of very specific backstories going on, but no real characters. If you're going to put people in there and make them about the humans, but you don't give them any sort of characteristics, you don't. There's pretty much no character arcs for anybody at all, which means that, again, there were too many people, and it was superfluous to have the humans that you did have because there was no arc in any of them. The girl's dad was sort of there in like two or three scenes. He was just there to be there, and that was it. There's the two nerdy guys being nerdy and again, no social skill. It was almost sort of like someone had worked on a Michael Bay movie and figured that this is all nerds, all smart people need to be this one really nerdy way, and they find some way to kind of save the day because look at all of Michael Bay movies. It was the nerdy, twitchy guy who's socially awkward and really anxietal and maybe even literally twitchy ends up being the ultra super mega hero and gets the chick at the end. That sort of thing. Again and again and again and again and again. Like, okay, we get it, Michael Bay. You consider yourself smarter than everyone else and a little bit quirkily fun, awkward, but you're really the badass who deserves all the women. Got it. Okay, dude. It's like there was a little bit of that in there, but then there really wasn't any resolution. So again, there was no real point for the human parts of the story. There wasn't. It was needless. I get that you're supposed to have you need to have some sort of end to the story. I get that you're supposed to have some sort of human connection because that's your sort of eyes into the action of what's going on. I get it. I get that you think that maybe, okay, these two things need to happen and then there's this third thing going on, but they really, really needed at least someone to go into the movie, went with the script, and I don't know if they needed to re-edit it, rework it. They needed to have a hatchet person go in there, chop it down, and build it back up into something tighter. Now that I'm sort of thinking it in process, like I literally just got home from watching it and started doing this after petting the cat and going to the bathroom because I really had to pee. You didn't need to know that. But it really, yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm processing it, the more it really seems that it was it was just not tight of a movie. It's like they wanted to have They wanted to go on this journey with Kong through the Hollow Earth. They wanted to have Godzilla have a problem with the humans who were making their own giant monsters. Okay, I get it. Um, but again, it almost sort of like, well, we don't have a full movie here. We don't have a full movie here. There's precedent for a King Kong versus Godzilla. Let's just smush all this together. And then they had these loose sort of threads connecting it. And then they had they seasoned these characters in there that were unnecessary. There was just a lot of it that didn't need to happen and didn't need to be there. They really could have taken out some of the people, taken out where some of it went and how some of it was going, and made it a much tighter, much better movie with probably a higher percentage of monsters in it. I mean, again, just following Kong around while, okay, big monster, is sort of like also, I'm starting to not care. I'm really starting to not care. Honestly, Kong had a greater character arc than probably anyone in the movie. Godzilla a little bit. Kong definitely did. Kong was. I mean, if they just had maybe someone, maybe two or three people in a room like this, and they had drones following Kong as he discovered, got free and discovered some inner Earth thing, that would have made more sense for that movie. But again, yeah, it just seems like there were two movies that they couldn't make full movies, so they tried to squish them all into one instead of making one tighter, more uh, sound of a movie. All right, so yeah. Again, I'm sort of processing this as I'm talking it out with this. So overall, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Like, I enjoyed it for the most part. It was good seeing some performers that I like working. You know, uh, Even though they didn't really have a whole lot to work with. The human characters really were just sort of one note little things to kind of bounce from thing to thing. But I mean, it was cool. The fights were cool for the most part. I think they used uh, the different ways Kong and Godzilla would fight. I think they used them, and they used them fairly well. The Mecha Godzilla stuff was cool. Again, the fact that he was sort of possessed by the consciousness of Ghidorah was neat. They used rocket and energy stuff in neat, cool ways. That was fun. But too many people, and too many people with no point, or very little point, or whatever point that they had could have been done better with one character instead of two or three. So it just seemed like there was way too much going on. So if they have another big kaiju movie, especially Godzilla, hopefully they'll realize that, oh well, we did way too much thing. Let's trim it down and make it a little bit more cogent. Maybe they're following the Star Trek rule where it's the even numbered movies are the really good ones. I don't know. All right, so like, subscribe. If you guys watch it, I hope you like it. Maybe you'll find stuff about it that I missed and like things about it more than I did. Cool. If you didn't like it, sorry, sorry. That's a couple hours that you didn't have to have not liking something. But yeah, that's all I got. So, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thank you for watching/listening and dealing with my ranting. And peace.